So we're doing Romans 10, 12 through 17. I'm using English Standard Version tonight. Romans 10, 12 through 17. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him of whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. But they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed what he has heard from us? So faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ.
Goeienaand, broers and sisters. Good evening, brothers and sisters. That was Afrikaans. Once again, it's an honor for me to be able to come here and share God's word with you. And I'd like to say thank you to Brent and Vicky who have spoiled us horrible. It's horrible because of all this food and all this extra weight in 5 days. But we appreciate your hospitality. We really do. And Tim and Hoyt and Betty and Ellen, thank you for opening up your homes and for spoiling us and taking us out. We appreciate it. We really do. And it's been wonderful to meet many of you. And I wish we had more time here so we could get to know you better and worship together. But like I said, this room is full of a sweet aroma, and that's the aroma of love, because you have a wonderful congregation here. All congregations aren't like this, and so appreciate what we've got. In 1994, I went full-time preaching. Prior to that, I was a businessman, but I'd already started 2 works in Johannesburg because there was nobody else in those areas. And I wanted to go preaching, and speaking to a brother one day, he said, so John, where do you want to preach? And, what's your thoughts on this? And I said, well, I hadn't really thought about it. But then I started thinking, during the 70s, we lived in Rhodesia, and I was involved with the border war, the Bush War, a horrible war. A cruel war. And I decided I'm going to go back to the 2 operational areas where I had been operating during the war years. That I can go and put something back into that area after all the destruction and the killing and the misery that took place. And I prayed about that, and God guided me, and God opened doors, and wonderful things have happened. And you, brethren, have now become involved. So you can now start talking of our work in Zimbabwe. It's our work. Because as we've just read, Lord, send me. We can't all go to Zimbabwe, and we can't all be preachers. But we can all do God's work. As I said this morning, remember, we're a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, that we go out and spread the word about God. And so I've got it sorted out tonight, I promise you. How are they going to believe? They've got to hear. Brethren, I go into the bush, and there are some places where they have not heard the gospel. There's other places where perhaps they've had some knowledge of some kind of denomination, but many of the areas are so far in the bush that really we drive on tracks that are made by animals rather than on a road. And you get to these areas, and we're able there to teach God's word. And that's what's so wonderful. So what happened? Somebody sent me, somebody sponsored me, somebody helped me. And I was able to go, and I was able to preach the gospel. And God opens the hearts of any individual who is seeking to know the truth. And all we've got to do is tell them. All we've got to do is tell them. So somebody has to be sent. On the picture behind me, if we look at the top corner, which is or the west of Zimbabwe there by the Point Binga area, is where I went after, when I started in Zimbabwe. Let me backtrack a little bit. I went into the area which is sort of between Bulawayo and the red dots at White Bridge on the west of Bulawayo. There was an old black fella there, a preacher, and he did not like the fact that I would accept an invitation from a congregation to come and preach and not first get his okay. I mean, plus a lot of drought relief had gone into that area, and there were some questionable practices there. And so my dear brother actually went to the authorities and tried to have me arrested. Because, and then when that didn't work, then he tried to accuse me of being a false teacher. And so this is just after I decided I'm going full-time preaching, and I went back home and I said to Lynn, oh man, I am so despondent, I'm so down. Have I made the right choice? Maybe God's showing me this is not what He wants for me. But things sure changed. And I'm going to tell you the story of how they changed. I must make sure I press the right one, Ben. That's a typical border crossing. When you get between the border of Zimbabwe and South Africa, it is chaos. Absolute chaos. The people are all over. You don't know which line to go in. I feel so sorry for people that go there for the first time. I mean, I know the ropes. Brett will tell you. I just say to Brett, come, and I use my contacts and we get through. But it's an absolute mess. And if I must be honest, that's one of the things I do not enjoy about my work, is crossing that border. Because even with all my crossings, whenever I get there, there's something new under the sun that they've decided. So I go into there, and then those dots that you saw at the bottom end there of White Bridge, these are the congregations that I've established since 2000. It was an area where there were no churches. There was nothing going on there. And I decided, like Paul did, to go into an area, not to build on another man's work, but to go and do something. And what I've always done is I've prayed and said, God, please help me. Give me an interpreter, give me somebody that can help me. Although I can speak the language down on the southern borders is a language called Venda, which I'm not that familiar with. And guess what happens? I meet a man who is the counselor at that time. Freddie, you met Freddie, Brent. And Freddie is the counselor. And Freddie is also the pastor or whatever of the ZZC, the Zionist Christian Church. The Zionist Christian Church is a black movement, and their doctrine is that the white doctrine is not sufficient. So they've got a lot of African doctrine thrown in with it. Well, I studied with Freddie in his village for a few days, and I baptized Freddie. Wow, I just landed a big fish. I landed a guy with all the contacts. He could give me the permission, the authority to go into the areas. And from there, it just spread, brethren. It just spread. The people in that area are hungry for the word. They're hungry for the word. And it's such a pleasure to be able to go in there and to teach them. The Christians that are there, they get so excited when they know they're getting a visitor. I had already told the brethren some time before Brent is coming, the first time. And they were looking so forward to it. And when he came the second time, they already knew Brent. And they said, oh, not that guy again. No, they didn't. They just loved Brent. And so It's so wonderful to go. Now I want to give you a bit of background to the villages. That's a typical sort of kitchen area. The woman will have a fire going in there, and there you see their pots standing outside. And we go around and we see the kitchens of marble tops and all the nice cabinets and all that. And the young people, they want to start where their parents are, 30 years down the line. They also want that. And then those people there have never even seen anything like that. They've got no idea. They've got to walk down to wherever the well is, if it's got water and if the pump is working. Mugabe's government didn't fix the pumps in many, many areas. That means they've got to walk even further. And if it's rained and there's some pools, then they can get water there. But basically, that is their kitchen. That's where they would prepare what you're going to eat. And if you're sitting around somewhere under a tree, Brent, remember we saw lunch going past on 4 legs, and we saw it being carried back with no skin on it. That was lunch. Or you'll see the youngsters chasing that chicken around the village, and you'll just hear that thing squawking, squawking, and then all of a sudden it'll be that squawk, then you know he's got him. You say, oh, well, lunch is going to be served in an hour or so. But then just stop and think about that. The water is carried in a 5-gallon drum. How many of you ladies can lift a 5-gallon drum? And how many of you ladies can put that on your head and walk like a model? It doesn't move. I saw one just recently get over a fence with that on their head. They are incredible. Or they would put wood on their head. They've got that's the other thing. We've got lovely gas stoves and electric stoves, and we turn it on, and we have the kettle, and we make the coffee. They know I love coffee. Everybody that knows me well knows I love coffee. Brent, oh man, he treats me so well. He puts it down there every morning for me. So I said to him, he can come again. But if you had to say, they say, John, in the bush, tea is the thing they drink. Would you like some tea? I'd say yes. And then you can forget it. You can go and have a class for an hour or more. Because they first have to make the fire and get it all going and then brew the tea. And so the woman's life in a village is extremely hard. It's difficult. Okay. But on the other side, they've never seen what you ladies have. They've never seen that. They don't have TV. There's no electricity. There's no running water. There's no waterborne sewage. It's just harsh. So those silver pots that you see there, they'll scrub them out, and that's actually aluminium, that pot. What do you say in your language? Yeah, you people speak funny. Aluminum. But they'll clean it. Boy, the cleanliness in an African village is unbelievable. They make a broom out of long grass, and they tie it in a bundle like this. And you'll see those women bending over like this, and they sweep that entire village area. They just are that way inclined. They are clean people. They will bring you water. I'm trying in South Africa amongst our white brethren to get them to do what we have in the bush, is that when it's time to eat something, the young ladies bring us a bowl of water. And what I like is they go, they really bend down. But I'm joking, I'm not trying to introduce that. But that's, and that you'll wash your hands, and then you'll have what you eat. But for them, it's an everyday thing. For them, they've got to go to get firewood. Sometimes around the villages, the wood is all depleted. They've got to go for water. The drier it gets, the further the water becomes. And so they've got a hard life. But the young girls are the ones that are actually the ones that fetch the water. Young lady? They've got to do that job. And they also collect wood. And you will see them, I'm not exaggerating when I say I couldn't put my arms around the bundle of wood, and it's probably 5 foot long that they put on their head. And you'll see them walking through the bush, coming back to the village with that. And the joy of it all is that these are happy people. They're happy people. I normally go in and I park my truck under a tree and we'll study with the men in the day, and at night we'll have a gospel meeting, and in between I'll sit there under the tree trying to keep the flies out of my mouth and my ears. But they're running around, the kids, and they're having a ball. If they do play soccer, they make a soccer ball out of plastic bags, and they have a great time with that. A great time. The women are busy cooking and they're laughing, and you think to yourself, they've got nothing. They've got nothing. But they're happy. But they've got something that you and I have got. And that's Jesus Christ in their life. And they've got the hope of eternal life. And that does make a difference. And when I go into a village, that's all that I can offer them. Because with the Africans in Africa, basically, when they see church, they see money. I went into a new area to get the permission of the chief to preach in that area, and he was over the moon. Oh, he said, man, come, I'll give you a plot of land, and you can put a building up here, and you can put a hospital up here. I said, oh, you've got the wrong church here, buddy. All I'm bringing is the gospel and nothing else. Well, he wasn't so ecstatic anymore. That's the mode of transport. How many of you in the congregation weren't so excited about turning 16? Why? Your driver's license. The chances are that the people out there would be very lucky if they had a job somewhere that they could buy a bicycle. But when we have services, that map I showed you, those red dots, they might seem close, but they're 5 to 10 miles apart, because what we have done is establish congregations. When we have a meeting and somebody comes and says, well, please, don't you want to come and preach the gospel in my village? Then we'll go there. So those congregations could vary between 10 and 20 and maybe 70 in some areas. So it's not always big congregations, but it's because of the location. But when we come in for a gospel meeting, they come, and boy, the ones that are affluent, they drive a donkey cart. The youngsters like to race those donkey carts. You'll see just now, I'll show you a piece of Zimbabwe in the drought. It's a beautiful racetrack. And we can either call that a 4x4, or we can call it a 4-cylinder. There's no V8s, and I love the V8s when I hear that drone. But brethren, they come in that, and they travel far. And I'm talking about old ladies who normally get to ride. You know, they're not in a position to walk very far. They're not in a position to walk very far. But they'll come. And when they come, remember the place has got lots of wild animals. So they don't go home that night. They will sit and sing all night, brethren, around the fire. You know, I would have been tired from traveling and that, and 11 o'clock I'll say, oh, I need to go and have a rest. And I'll lay there in the back of my truck and listen, and they're singing all night long. And then tomorrow morning, as the dawn breaks, they'll start returning home, because it's quite possible to meet an elephant or a lion or a hyena or anything on the road. So they just stay there. Now I want to tell you a lovely story. We were on a trip. It was a really extended trip. It was about a month or longer. And we were establishing congregations and visiting existing congregations. And I think there were 4 of us traveling in my truck. And we'd left the one village, and we were on our way to another village. And I said to the guys, you know, let's just find a nice place to stop and break open a tin of bully beef. That's our favorite, you know, good meals in the bush. And so we eventually came to a place where there's some nice boulders and some nice trees, and we pulled over there, and we got out, and we were just sort of getting ready. And through the bush, I saw movement. And I looked at that, and eventually I saw it was somebody walking, but extremely slow. And then this person started mumbling and complaining. And then I said to one of the guys, let's go in. And it was an old lady. I mean, this was an old lady. And so we went up to her, and she started, "Who are you? What do you think you're doing? What are you doing here?" So I said to her, "Well, I'm a preacher, and we're going to this village about a half an hour from here, and we're going to be preaching there." She said, "Oh." I said, "Why don't you come?" She said, "How do you expect me to come?" I said, "I'll come and fetch you." She said, "Okay." And I went and fetched her, and I baptized her that night. And it turned out that that old lady was like that on her own. She had no family, nothing, living out there on her own. And the ladies from the congregation we went to, they took her in. They said, "We go back and we get all her belongings and we bring her to that village." And she had the family that the Lord talks about when we leave families behind. Eh? So why did we stop there? Is that not providence? That we chose that particular spot in all the places to stop? And this is the kind of thing that really makes me so excited about my work. That God is there with us. He's there with us and guiding us and helping us. There's the 4x4, you young guys. The lever is like his whip that he carries in his office, that bull whip. That's the 4x4 lever. You just put that on, and boy, those donkeys can really go. But that's their mode of transport. Now, you know, in those villages, other than Western clothes, it's quite interesting that things are basically like they were 2,000 years ago. They live with elders and judges and all this kind of thing. But come October, when the rains start coming, do you know what the young men do? They did what Saul did. The father sends them off to find the donkeys because there's no fences there. And so during the time that they're not used to plow and donkey cart, they just walk free. And like Saul, they could disappear for weeks on end, just looking for the donkeys. And I'd love to know how they recognize them. They've got no brand marks, and the one donkey is as ugly as the next one. But they all find their donkeys, and they bring them back. And this is the sad thing. Now, they get a good shower of rain in November, and you go and you see all these guys either with oxen or with donkeys, and they've got this old-fashioned plow with one disc, and they're plowing their fields. And I just think, shame. They are so persistent. Almost every year they do that. And every year they plant their seed. And every year there's some rain and it comes up. And every year there's no follow-up. There's no follow-up. And so, drought relief, you, brethren, have shown your love. You've been part of fulfilling the promise that Jesus made in Matthew 6. Without people like yourselves, these people would starve. And God can be accused of not keeping his word. But that doesn't happen. And that's why I say, I don't believe Brent and I meeting was by accident. And I don't believe for a minute that Satan didn't try and hinder our relationship. Because that's what God wanted. That's what he wanted. And so we think of these brethren, and we think of their situation, of how difficult it is for them. That one trip Lynn went with me. She used to come a lot with me. And we had a young lady, Stacy Job from North Beach Street, and she so wanted to come out and see. And so we invited her. And we went to Peter Mansaka's village. And what Peter had done now, he heard that Lynn was coming and Stacy was coming. So in the hut, he made them a bed. The bed consisted of poles cut from the trees in the bush, and then some bark stretched across. That was the mattress. They don't even have a bed. Lynn and them couldn't even sleep on that bed that was made. They slept on the floor. It was more comfortable. Basically, brethren, they don't have furniture. They will have some kind of bed in some cases, but remember they're staying far out. Turf, where I'm going to be concentrating a lot of my work in the future, is one that is probably 40 miles off the blacktop. But the blacktop was probably 80 miles from anything else. So these people haven't got the corner store they can run to and buy some bread or a bit of sugar or a bit of salt. When I take the drought relief in, brethren, do you know what we buy them? Only cornmeal, because there's not enough money to buy them a bit of sugar and a bit of salt. And sometimes they'll say, can't you just bring us some soap to do our washing? That's how bad it is, brethren. That's how they struggle. And yet they teach us that joy comes from within. It comes from within. And when we love the Lord, and like I said this morning, we understand how special we are to God, we can have that joy. We can have that joy. We can do that rejoicing that Paul told Timothy. He said, rejoice in the Lord. And again I say to you, rejoice, because something to be happy about. We've got hold of something that is so wonderful. If we only walk with the Lord, we've got that. And we know in our heart, Corinthians, I quote to 2 Corinthians 13:5, he said, examine yourselves. Ask yourselves when you lie in bed tonight, am I giving God my best? Am I giving Him my best? Am I that living sacrifice that Romans 12 talks about? Or are we like the guys in Malachi that's giving God this sloppy mess? These people are happy, brethren. They're happy. And when you arrive there, they are so thrilled that somebody has taken an interest in them, that somebody has taken the interest to come and teach them. And they will sit. As long as you want to teach and preach, they will sit. They will sit. And it's not unusual. I must tell you while we're on the donkeys. When I drive through the bush, and Brent will tell you a lot of these are just tracks, I'll see people on the side of the road and I stop and I talk to them about Jesus. So this one day I'm going along and there's this old fellow on a donkey cart, and I stopped him and I said, do you know Jesus? Would you like me to tell you about him? You know, he said something that was wonderful to make a lesson on. He said, what benefit is there for me in this Jesus? What benefit is there for me? Well, I said, let me come to your village and I'll tell you. And he did. We came back some months later because, you know, when I'm on a trip, I've got everything planned. It's very difficult to get hold of the brethren and to plan a trip so that everything is in order when you get there. And we went back there later some months, but unfortunately in that village was a lot of women from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, black women. And boy, those people knew the Bible, hey. If you weren't studied the Bible, they would convince you that you're wrong. And so I went back there a couple of times, but I never made any progress. But the old man and the donkey, I just loved, what benefit is there for me in this Jesus? And we all know what benefit there is, eh? Children, that's so many of them. And we have an opening, any school in Zimbabwe. If I went and asked the headmaster, can I teach the children? They'd stop whatever they're doing. And they would bring the kids out, and Brent had that experience. And they will let you teach them. That's something. And those little kids, you see their schools, the windows are broken, the blackboards are not working properly. I once stopped on the road, there was a little girl of about 12, 13 years old selling the creamer tartar seed of the baobab tree. And I stopped and I said to her, how much do you want for that? I didn't want it, but I'd like to support them. You know what she said to me? She said, I don't want money. Can you give me a pen for school, please? A pen. This is what we take so for granted. Everything is at our fingertips. We get in a car and we go. We get in a car and we go. We get out and we go into a warm house. I said we move from village to village. So I went to one village. I got to the second village. And these villages are 5 and 10 miles apart. One was in the evening, one in the morning, the other one was late in the afternoon. And sitting there, I looked and I said to Isaac, Isaac, I said, that lady over there, does she have a twin sister? He said, no, why? I said, because I saw her yesterday, way back there. And I saw her this morning. He said, no, it's the same woman. That woman walked, brethren. She walked to hear the gospel. And I went to her and I said, you never walk again. You come and tell me you want to go with us to the next meeting and you'll ride in the truck. But brethren, can you imagine somebody so hungry for the word? When we have a meeting, even in Johannesburg, oh man, I tell you, it's so poorly attended that it breaks my heart. And yet everybody can get in their car, they can drive there. But you know, it's remember that word I used this morning, diligently? If people can't even come to a gospel meeting, and yet you go out there and these people walk, they walk, lots of them. Because remember, the donkey cart is reserved for the old and frail ladies. And the young ladies, and that woman wasn't that young, I'm sure she was in her 50s already. But she walked to every one of those meetings. And that blew my mind, brethren. That blew my mind to think that people are so hungry for God's word. And so, what I'm trying to show you is that here are brethren, and they are brethren that believe what you believe and what I believe. They are brethren that are honest. Now people say, oh, John, the people just come for the food. Maybe there are some. Maybe there are some that just come for the food. But I'm not the judge of that. If they've been baptized for remission of sins and have become part of God's household, then they're welcome to receive what you, brethren, help to send over there. And if they dishonest, God will know. But other than that, these people, and some of them can read. Now, Vicky doesn't know this yet. She's got an idea. But she's coming to Zimbabwe with Brent. And when I take Lynn into the bush, the woman, they're over the moon. Because, ladies, you can't sit and talk to your preacher about some of your personal woman things. So when my wife comes, they don't leave her alone. So Vicky, when you come, the two of you can sort of share the load. But they are so happy to have a woman to share things with. The African woman, there's some more of the kids. Wherever we go, there's kids. And I always buy packs of sweets because that's not something they can buy. Now, we try and get them to stand in line because kids will be kids, you know, and one will get it and they'll try and sneak back in there. But the mothers come as well. And so the mother comes with a baby and she'll want one for her baby and then she'll say, you can't not give them. So everybody ends up getting a sweet or a lollipop or something. It's just something that their faces light up for something like that. Our kids go into the grocery store and, Kit Kat bar, one M&M, and I don't feel like that. These kids, I tell you what, even your balls you gave me to suck, they would love them. So, brethren, this is something that these kids, if we had the time to spend more time in the schools, to plant that seed, because these are not family necessarily of Christians, but there are children there that are family of Christians. And so there's so much work that can be done there. There's so much work. That is a little pool that's left in the river. And that's sometimes a 30-mile drive from a village where I've been preaching and people want to be baptized. And you say to somebody, do you know if there's water in the Unetsi River? Oh, I don't know. So we drive there. And sometimes you get there and there's no water. Then you drive somewhere else. Yeah, when someone wants to get baptized, where's the... It's here, man. You show. Yeah, right here, man. Just come, we'll baptize you. I once baptized 19 people in Mozambique. You've seen on TV when the elephants dig out the sand to drink water. Well, we dug out a hole in the sand to baptize these people. And I had 3 guys helping me. The one guy was taking the feet and bending them back. The other guy, if he was inclined to be a bit like me, they sat on his stomach almost. But we got them submerged. The Catholic would have said, no, John, no, just take some water there and sprinkle them and they'll be saved. No, that's not what Jesus told us, eh? So sometimes situations are difficult, but that doesn't allow us to compromise. It does not allow us. We don't have that authority, we don't have that right. We've got to do what the Lord tells us to do. And so these kids, we're back to the water hole. Sometimes there's water, sometimes there's not. But again, we need rain. We need rain. This is very typical of the ladies. They sit on the floor. That's tradition, and they won't change that tradition. And I certainly won't try to change that tradition. When Lynn goes with, she sits on the floor. Those ladies in the bush do not wear pants, ever. They will wear dresses or skirts or something. That's tradition in that part of the world. And so when Lynn goes in, that's how she'll always dress, with a skirt, but they'll always sit on the floor. They'll either have an old goat skin, a goat that's been skinned and it's been dried out, and that's what they sit on, or they weave these grass mats, and then they sit on that. And they will sit there for hours, and just listen to the lesson. You know, when I was a young guy in the Hillside congregation in Bulawayo, we were all typical new Christians, young Christians, and some of the elders. You know what was a common thing there? Maybe you have it here. How long is the preacher going to carry on? When is he going to sit down? You don't have that. First time I went out, the elders asked me to go out and preach, and Lynn and I went out. We were young Christians at a village, and there were 2 or 3 other black preachers there. Every preacher was asked to preach a lesson Sunday morning into Sunday afternoon, and nobody had a problem with it. So we got up and we sort of thought, we never took lunch with us because we were only about 80 miles out of town. Well, I tell you, we got quite hungry because we only got home about 5 o'clock. But that's what it's like. And like I say, when they walk to come to a meeting, they sit and sing all night. It's just, you hear them out there, and you hear them laughing and giggling, and I think, man, you know, we are inclined, we've got so much. We've got so much. Look, South Africa, Johannesburg, it's like here, you know, it's modern, it's a modern city, and we've got the facilities, we've got everything. And yet then you hear the complaints. You hear the complaints. You know, this sister has always got an excuse why she can't come. And that one has had such a hard day at work. And these people walk. They can't bath, they wash. You never bath. Even with Brent and I, they'll bring us some hot water in a dish, and you'll wash yourself. So their whole lifestyle is so different and so hard. I'm embarrassed when I say this. We've eaten so much. We didn't know what to order, brethren. It's such a choice. Wow. So, sister in the bush will say to her husband, what would you like for dinner? Oh, I'd like some sadza. Sadza is cornmeal. And so it will be every night. They don't have anything else. They might slaughter a goat amongst a lot of them, but the goats are used for bartering, so that in Zimbabwe, they're required to wear school uniforms, which is a good thing in one way, but for those poor people, I find it rather unfair, because they have got so little or nothing, and then they've got to use it to buy school uniforms. But brethren, those ladies are something else. They really are. They're faithful, they're strong, they're helpful. When we go into those villages, they cannot, it's like you brethren, they just cannot do enough for us. They cannot do enough for us. I've told you about the lonely old lady that we stopped. That was something special. That's a typical scene in the evening, sitting under a tree with the inverter on my truck. Nowadays, of course, we have solar lights. Oh, it makes it so much easier. Brent, were you with me when the truck wouldn't start? At Turf? At Turf?
Turf,
yeah. My truck wouldn't start. And you know, these new vehicles, you've got to put that clutch in. So you can't push start it and let the clutch out. So we woke up in the morning, we wanted to go, and guess what? So one enterprising guy said, I know somebody that has a solar panel. And so off we went and brought it, and we sat there for 4 or 5 hours, and that gave us enough power to start that truck. And but at night we can sit like that. Extremely difficult for them to be able. We've made a lot of songbooks, a little bit upmarket, Brent, from what we've got at Honey Fountain, because the black languages, they can all sing those languages, so it makes it easier. But nowadays, like I say, with solar and that, we can put more lights out and we can see a lot more. This man deserves a story. He is the chief at Turf. His name is Mapanzi. Mapanzi one day, unbeknown to me, sat in the meeting that I had in Isaac's village. I remember him sort of being quite observant and listening to what I had to say. And sometime later, Isaac said, Brother John, that old man that was there, and I couldn't quite, he wants you to come and preach in his village. And that was Turf. I said, fine, that's great. That's exactly what I love to do, is go to a new place and preach the gospel. And so we made a date and a time and everything, and we said, right, we will be there. And so Isaac and I drove through it. We were supposed to meet at 5 o'clock the afternoon, and we were going to have a meeting that night. And we got there, and there was nobody in the village, just a couple of chickens and goats running around. And we waited, and I said to Isaac, maybe we've got it wrong, or he didn't understand. Or now, we're far out in the bush, and I mean, you can't really travel those roads at night. There's all sort of obstacles in the way. And I said to him, we're going to have to make a decision to go back. And we had decided at 6:15, because it's summertime, so at 6:15, we still had an hour and 40 minutes to get off the dirt track. And as we were about to start the truck, here comes Mapanzi on his bicycle. And he's almost wanting to fall prostrate, apologizing. And he said, I'm so sorry. He said, we've had problems. We're all in the fields. We're trying to chase the elephants out that's destroying our crops. But it's on for tonight. Well, I tell you what, that guy, and he's got a son, Daniel, and a son, Shepherd. They're not Christians, but they've got a meeting coming. They went around, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that night, from the surrounding villages, there must have been 200 people that came to hear the gospel. Not a Christian. And he and 18 of the village were baptized the next morning. Next time I got there, what did Mapanzi have? He built a little church building. One of the few that's not under a tree. And for God so loved the world. And this has just been an incredible man. An incredible man. And now I want to tell you the problem we have in that part of the country is We're so close to the border, and because there's no work in Zimbabwe, the men cross illegally into South Africa to find work. Daniel, his son, I had him on my ranch, and I taught him for nearly 2 years. Sharp, sharp young man. And he stayed in the village for a while. And the next time I went, I said, "Where's Daniel?" No, he's working in South Africa. And so we have an ever-migrating men's population in that area, which makes it extremely difficult, unlike maybe the Binga area where there's very far from our border, that the men are not as liquid or whatever you want to call it, moving about. So I have a responsibility to go back as often as I can into this area to try and help these people and to try and ground them further and further. That was half of the congregation at Turf, and this was the other half. We couldn't get them all in. But that's the old man's congregation. There is like 70 or 80 Christians in that area. And when we were there the last time, Brent and we went home, remember how those ladies were? They were so grateful. That's a gratefulness that we were there. I mean, all the time when Brent walked through there and I walked through, they were just so happy that we'd come. And this is what you are involved with when you get involved with the brethren in Zimbabwe. It's something that can teach us the joys of life. Peter Mansaka, another good story. I don't know, how's my time? Oh, it's finished. Peter Mansaka. After this brother tried to have me arrested and all that, and I was so despondent, and I went home and I said to my wife, I don't know. My son was in the printing industry, and he printed me thousands of little leaflets about the church and all that. And in Texas, I would have been arrested, but I used to drive and just throw them out in the bush, throw them out. And if I tell you I threw 50,000 of those out and I got one response, it's Peter Mansaka. I get this letter because my address and phone number was on the little pamphlet. And it goes something like this. Sir, I also am a Christian. And I was sitting on a bus. And there were two drunks sitting in front of me. And they were reading. And I peeked over their shoulder because I was afraid they will beat me. And he said, could you please send me any kind of material? So I got an idea of where he stays, and within 2 days I got in my truck and I drove over 1,000 miles. I drove into Peter's village, and I said, I'm looking for Peter Mansaka. He said, I am he. I said, well, I am John Scholtz. You wrote me. His mouth fell open. And Peter has been a faithful Christian ever since. And Peter has been responsible for so many of those men we studied with, that he's taught them and taught them. And so these stories go on, and just the beauty of teaching God's word. Peter did lose a child that ran across the road and a car killed him. Just a little sidetrack, one car maybe the whole day, and that child chose that time to run over. And Peter lost an eye. When him and his brother were small, it was during the war years, they actually picked up the hand grenade, and they didn't know what it was. They played with it, it went off, it killed his brother, and he lost an eye because of it. But Peter is a wonderful man, and really does a lot of work. Peter and I, initially when we were down there, that's when I was a bit younger and a bit fitter, we would hike 20 miles over a mountain to get to his village, because there were no roads in there. There is a road now, and Brent and I, we attempted, but we had Lynn's car, and we were so scared that she's going to beat on us if we messed up that car. So we decided we're going to turn around, we'll do it another time. But anyway, this is just some of the men at Turf, some good men, but again, like I said, they come and they go. But I got a wonderful phone call one day from Paul Williams, who is miles down on our East Coast. And he said, John, I'm going to just tell you, a guy that you taught in Zimbabwe came knocking on the door of the church in a place called Ashawi. Oh man, you know, That was good news. That was good news. Brother Moya. Sorry, brethren, I'm taking a lot of time, but I'm enjoying myself. Brother Moya, like I said, I go in my truck, I have a topper on it, and I sleep there at night, and in the morning I get up, and I'll make myself a cup of coffee. Now, I was preaching in that village that night, and we just had the propane gas lamp, and there was a fellow sitting in the back with a beard. And I started getting really concerned about the way this guy was checking me out. And I thought, hey man, I must be careful here tonight. I don't know what this guy's plans are. And early the next morning, I was busy making coffee, and there was somebody by me, and as I turned around, it was Moya. You know, my first reaction was to react. He says to me, I know you. I says, you know me? He said, I don't know you. Where on earth do you know me from? And he started to tell me a story that made my hair stand on end. He said in February 1977, he said, you were leading a patrol in Chief Sonomagoni's valley. I said, yes, I remember, because that was a beautiful valley. He says, and you came to a village. Now we tried very hard, even during the war years, to keep protocol. You don't just walk into a village. There's a protocol. I said, I remember that. I said, were you one of the kids in that village? He said, no. He said, I was a terrorist commander, and I was sitting 50 meters away with my AK trained on you. He said, but you had a reputation of being a very fair man, because atrocities were committed by both sides. And I would never allow anything of that nature to take place with my men. He said, I had my AK trained on you, and I could have taken you out any time I wanted to. I baptized that man. He preaches today. He saved my physical life, and I saved his spiritual life. So these are the kind of things that happen, that we never know. There's another man in Isaac's area that was an ex-gook, or terrorist, whatever you want to call him. He today, his name is Pelly. Pelly preaches. And we often sit and reminisce. And he always tells me how scared he was when he heard our helicopters coming over. And you know, we laugh about it, but you know, enemies can be friends when we come into the Lord, eh? That was one of the times I was able to get a truckload of maize across the border, which doesn't happen often. He had actually restricted maize to 80 kilograms, 150, 60 pounds per individual. And then all of a sudden, he lifted that, and we had funds, and we got that truck, a 30-ton truck, and we got that maize over. So there are good times and bad times. This is just handing out. There was a time when we were able to give a little bit more, you know. Some tin fish, they love tin fish and things of that nature. So sometimes we're able to just give them a treat, because a treat is something other than cornmeal. That's the same again. This is in Isaac's village, and everybody is so excited when we come with food. I mean, they're like a rubber ball bouncing around, you know. And you've got to see it to believe it and feel it, because you can't show it here. That, brethren, is what the Bright Bridge area looks like. That is drought. There's no grass. The rains come. The grass comes up that high. The rains don't follow up. The goats and the cattle eat it all. And then they're left with that. Now, Rachel, this one is for you. That's a 10-foot black mamba, which are quite common in our area. And these are all the kind of things. These people are out there in the bush. They don't have any kind of medical equipment or tablets or clinic near them or a vehicle to take them to a hospital. So people say to me, John, what happens when a black mamba bites you? I say, quickly repent and sit down. There's nothing else you can do.
Tell me where that is.
That's on our stoop at the farm. Now you've just told Vicky. But brethren, our brethren have all sorts of problems. That's what they can come across. That's taken driving through the bush. Come across an elephant. I love elephants. I play with them. They're my friends. But those are things that they encounter. I've already had to put an elephant down that had killed a man, and the authorities were not interested in it. You know, the forest department said, no, it's national parks. National park says, no, it's forest problem. No problem. My nephew up there has a 375. We'll sort it out, Brent. We'll sort it out. The same is with these fellas. Free roaming lions. If only Satan could put up a board like that, eh? Oh boy, would we keep away from him, hey? Would we keep away from him? So I said to you earlier, these brethren move at night. Any of that, hyenas, lions, elephants, every little pool that has water in Zimbabwe possibly has these fellows there. Many Zimbabweans get taken every year trying to cross illegally into South Africa. And I did have to sort one of those out that had taken a young boy in a village where I had a congregation. And the same story, everybody says, not our problem. So then let's just sort it out is the easiest way to do it. Yes, sir?
Joe, I'm proud because I took that photo.
You what?
I took that photo.
You took that photo. And I had to keep him out. He wanted to jump in there. Now, those are common on the Limpopo River. They're very common. But brethren, I've asked Zach to close with a song. Not quite Zach, but there is work to do with this much on every hand. I would like to still, the years that God gives me to be fit. I'm pretty fit for my age, and I still have some years, and I would like to go in further past turf, right up to the Mozambique border, which is extremely urban, or shall rural, right up in the bush, right up completely wild. But I've been invited to preach there. But I do not have the financial ability to do that right now. I don't have the kind of vehicle that will take me up there. But there's work to be done. There's work to be done. And then I would like us to have a look at the... Oh, no, this is Honey Fountain. This is our little home congregation. And yes, yeah, we've got a real Martha. She's always worried about keeping the floor clean and pouring the Lord's Supper. And we have a great... They're from different farms on Sunday mornings. I go one way, Lynn goes another way, our friend Martin's another way. And we go and pick up people, and we come together. And this is a little building that we have there, and a wonderful group of people. That's Lynn with her class. That was small that day. She can have anything between 20 and 30 people, kids between 18 months and 14 years. The mothers just send them. And I feel sorry for her because she doesn't know what material to prepare and what she's going to use. And so, I don't know, she seems to do something every Sunday there. Do you remember this? They're fishing, they're not catching any fish. And Jesus comes along and said, cast the net on the other side. So they obey him. And what happens? That net is so full of fish that they call for help. Tonight I'm calling for help. Because the Lord has cast the net for us in that area of Zimbabwe. And I can't pull it in by myself. It's impossible. So I'm asking whether it's financial or sending brethren to help me. Brent, go in there and teach these people. A new congregation far in the bush. We need to spend a week to 10 days with those brethren. Because when they're baptized, we've got to, at least the men that are there, to prepare them to at least be able to do the fundamental things on a Lord's Day. So, brethren, that's my thought that I leave with you. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done, and out there are Christians There are hungry Christians, there are poor Christians. And so we would say in Indameli, Hamba gashle. Hamba gashle. Go slowly. My broers and my sisters, gesondheid. My brothers and sisters, good health to you. And in English, never forsake the Lord, because He'll never forsake us. Walk with Him. Be that special person that we are to God. And part of what you folks are doing here is part of those good works that we are told we were created for good works. And I praise you, brethren, and I commend you, brethren. Sam, it's so good to see a young man that has decided to preach the word. Remember what we read? If there's no preacher, how are they going to hear? How beautiful are the feet of those that are willing to go and preach the gospel, whatever the circumstances are. And so, Sam, God bless you for your future as you leave for Oregon or Washington. I don't know your states, but I must tell you, California is beautiful. It's beautiful. And we've thoroughly enjoyed our stay. We've thoroughly enjoyed you, brethren. And I wish we could have stayed longer and spent more time with you. But I'm afraid I would have had to buy 2 tickets for 2 seats going home. Because, man, these cakes at Madonna and, Let's close with 0081.
Don't forget your final slide, John.
You want me to? Oh, how could I forget? I mean, the man of the moment. I thoroughly enjoyed Brent. And like I said this morning, he took like a duck to water. He just fitted in and never complained, and put him on the floor with fresh dung floors and whatever else. And he just went there, no problem. Vicky, we won't do that to you. You'll stay in the hotel. You'll stay in the hotel. But Brent had the opportunity to teach those children, and they loved him. They all sit there and they say, in unionism, good morning, sir. And I think that is the end of it. Brethren, thank you for your attention. Sorry that I said to Brent, I'm not a long-winded talker, but I love talking about my brethren in Zimbabwe. Zach, shall we close? And if there's anybody here tonight that would like to be part of God's family, the special people that we are to God, when we sing the closing song, please, if you need to give your life to the Lord, if you need to be baptized for repentance of your sins, then come forward. Or if you're shy to come forward, go to the men, go to the elders, go to the men and tell them, this is what I want to do. You don't have to come up here. And if you're examining yourselves and you're not walking with God, remember this morning I said, are we just having a stroll with God, or are we walking with God? If we've been strolling with God, let's determine to re-examine and rededicate our lives to our God and Father. Let's stand.